Well, hello, welcome to this new video and welcome to the Real Code Show. In this video, we're going to be seeing how to make a login system within Spring Boot and how to use it simply and integrate it within Spring Boot applications. So, in this case, I have already this project loaded into my IDE, and what I am going to do is to integrate Spring Security plus Timeleaf plus Spring Boot to automate the process and build a ready-to-go application, so you can see that with the minimal configurations of with Spring Security alongside Spring Boot, we can do great things. So to start off first this video, I want you to show you off first what I have in my pom.xml. I have, let's see, I have the security and the Spring Web. Is there anything else to add? And the answer is yes. What I have left to add is I have already here another project where I am going to place here the dependency of Timeleaf. Now the dependency of Timeleaf will let us to create pages inside, pages with an extension of HTML that will provide to us an engine to process pages inside the Spring Boot a Spring Boot application to function as a monolithic application inside running on the web. Now with Timeleaf also we can do a lot of things with alongside Spring Security. So as you will be seeing in this video, in this brief video, I don't think I will be delaying so much in this kind of tutorial, because I don't want it to be like so long, this video. So the first thing that I am going to do is to first create some packages. The first package that I am going to be creating is the security, and the another one that I am going to be creating is controllers. Now with Spring Security, in regards of the security package, I'm going to be creating a class here that you are going to be seeing. I'm going to be placing configuration. In this class, I am going to be annotating it as let me see the configuration of my keyboard in Spanish. Well, configuration. And with these annotations from the Spring framework annotation, I don't know why this wrote me that way. Well, I'm going to be leaving it as presented there because I don't understand why it is giving me in that way. But anyways, we're going to be integrating as suggested there. And in regards of the being, we are going to be creating a method that is going to be functioning as a being method, and it's going to be retrieved as a filter chain object, and we're going to be creating a new object that alongside this method it will be throwing an HTTP security object. Similarly, at the same time, it will be throwing an exception. So why are we going to put this security filter chain being? Because we want to tell Spring Security first that the user will have some access to some endpoints, and some endpoints will not have access, will not be allowed to the user. In some words, in other words, Spring Security will suggest to the user that the user has to be authenticated first in order to access certain endpoints. So in this case, what we are going to be doing is to configure first the CSRF. This is something like kind of extra, because when telling this kind of things to Spring Security, we are legally making the system like enabled to be accessed in the web and not to be like having problems. This is another topic for another video, so I don't want you to be overwhelmed with this. In this case, what I'm going to do here with this auth object is, like you can see here with the authorized HTTP request, in this lambda expression, what we are going to be doing is to tell Spring Security which endpoints are going to be allowed to the user and which endpoints are going to be not allowed to the user. So in this case, as you can see here, the AI is already suggesting me some endpoints that I may include into my project, but because due to the fact that I have already opened my another project that I have already on another screen, the AI is suggesting me the paths that I am going to be using. So these paths are verified and these are truth. So these are going to be the paths that I'm going to be using. So in few words, what I am doing here is by the permit all constraint here, I am permitting the path that goes followed by the slash and then home and as a slash. Whenever I write a slash or a slash home, I am going to be permitting. Whenever I write a slash followed by the dashboard, this will be authenticated. This path will tell Spring Security to the user that whenever you want to access this endpoint, you must have been already signed up and have an object into the security context that in a minute we're going to be seeing that. And also whenever I hit or search for the slash followed by the login, then I am going to be permitting all, because whenever I want to consult the login page, obviously I gotta have it allowed to the user in order to always log in to the system. Now, what we're going to do then here, I am going to be putting the form login, and with this I am going to be telling to the Spring Security to get understood which endpoint is going to be for Spring Security allowed to consult either to the form or another method that we need to the user to enter the credentials. So in this case, what we're going to be doing is to tell Spring Framework that by the path that is named slash logging, so there is going to be residing our authentication method or our authentication place. So in this case, I am going to be creating a method in the form of lambda, in a lambda way, and by this method I am going to be telling that the login page, as I told you, that I am going to be telling to Spring Security which place is the allowed place to consult whenever a user wants to authenticate. So Spring Security will have in mind which place to consult and where to get the authentication. So in this case, Spring Security will get the authentication or get the credentials by the slash logging path. And also, whenever our user successes into the process, then we are going to be telling to Spring Security, that it will be redirected to the path of the dashboard, and it's always going to be true in the case it is successful, the process. And in case of failure, when we are into a failure process, into this verification process, we are going to be redirecting again the user to the login, but we are going to be adding a flag into or a variable into the URL, and we are going to be placing the as error equals to true. And then when we catch this method into the slash logging controller, we're going to be verifying that whenever it gets a variable like error equals to true or set to another value, we're going to be verifying which objective or what was the reason that came with an error, and based on that we're going to be throwing a certain message based on the of the origin of precedence. And by this, the only thing that we need or we are left to do is to say that this is permit all, because we want Spring Security to always access whenever an error is thrown. And also because when we have a login system, obviously we gotta have a logout system because we want to eliminate the session, right? But for that case, what we have to do here, always here, there's no another place to put the logout system. This is also here. So this is like a monotonous, like a simple process to memorize, like kind of memorize, but a repetitive way. And you can approach this, you can take leverage from this to approach this logout system. And by this HTTP method, you can simply put .logout and then open the parentheses, and we are going to also create another lambda object. We're going to point here another function in a lambda way, and what we are going to be doing is to configure by this object created to create a logout successful URL in the case that we get a success process into the logout process, right? And what we are going to be redirecting is again to the login, but in this case, instead of writing a variable named error, we are going to be writing a variable set to true, because this is what the Spring Security will be telling to our controller whenever we catch again this request. We're going to be verifying if a logout or an error variable is set to true. Either way, we're going to be verifying it, and we are going to be throwing a message based on that result. And also what is left to do is to invalidate the session, and we place here as true, and we permit all as well, because in order to redirect again to be able for Spring Security to be able to redirect again to the login controller and set a variable, you have to always tell to Spring Security that it is permitted for him to redirect you again to that path. And we have one thing left to do here in this case, and that is to put HTTP basic. And with this, we are telling that by the customizer with defaults method here, we are telling to Spring Security to use all of the default configuration to put the login system. So that means that Spring Security will take care first to authenticate your user based on a username and password parameters. So we are going to be leaving here in this video the configuration of the security. We have one thing left to do here, and that is to create another bin. But in the next video, we're going to be creating the form and the controllers for you to see that by the security filter chain, we can do better things and a lot of things, because based on this, we are putting a whole login system, and the authentication process will be taken care by the security filter chain or the Spring Security in general. And the only thing that you are going to be responsible of is to provide the credentials via a form that you have to create. That is the only thing that you are responsible to, because you have to create by a time leaf or to consult from React or another front-end language that you may be using, like based on your architecture. But if you are using a monolithic application, you can integrate the time-leaf engine to process all of these HTML pages, and so easily you can integrate a lot of the suitable place to enter the user's credentials. So having all of this worldly part said, we are going to be returning this HTTP build. So I just want to make sure that you understand this part first, because this is the key point first, for then to integrate the controllers and the form system. So this is the essential key point, right? So if you haven't understand this, or I have like misspelled something, or like divide into some topic, let me know in the comments down below, please. And also, by the way, don't hesitate to share this video or subscribe to this channel, and also like this video. But anyways, we're going to be returning again to the topic back again. And what we're going to be doing, like I have told you, there's only one thing left to do, and that is to create another Bing. So this Bing will be issuing a user detail service, and what this method will be doing is to issue credentials, basically. But these credentials will be issued in the way of user detail service, and this object is basically the compatible way that Spring Security will understand for you to store the authentication object that will be stored into the security context. So this is a whole process and a whole architecture, and well, if you don't know it, you can consult or research to it into Google, and you can read a little bit about it to understand it. But yeah, follow me if you don't understand. But these are the key points to understand first, and why am I needed to be creating or issuing credentials in this case? Because we don't have any database to take credentials and validate based on the credentials that we entered in the form. So there's no way to create or take the credentials from the database and see if they match both, and if the process is successful, then we are authenticating the user. But we don't have that scenario yet. But what we are able to do is to issue credentials based on a user detail service, and that is to issue a Bing and then take the Bing back and then match the credentials based on what you enter from the form and then what you have issued from the Bing way. Now, having all that said, let's create the Bing that we are going to be using. So the Bing will be followed like this. We're going to be creating, as I told you, a user detail service. Here you can see user details service, and we're going to name it the same way. We are going to also be allowing a parameter that is of the type of a password encoder. So this is like the nature of this method, to always like to, it's not like to, that is mandatory for the password encoder to hash or encrypt all of the passwords. That process will be executed by the Spring Security in this case. So in the body of this method, what we are going to be doing is just simply generate the credentials. And how are we going to make that process? Generate the credentials. So we are going to be creating a string of username, and we are going to be concatenating by the UUID class. We're going to be calling the random UUID and then calling the toString and then substring to get from the first character to the 8th character, and then it will be stored into the username, because this will be concatenated with the randomized values that we just generated. And then we're also going to be generating a row password, because why do we call it row? Because then it will be encrypted by the password encoder object that we are passing right here. So then to create the password, we are going to be using the same library, the same class WID, and we're going to be call again the random UUID, and we are going to be taking 12 characters from the string generated, and we are going to encode the password. So that's why we need the password encoder object here. You can see here that it is throwing me an error. In a minute we will be solving it, but we have to encode it here by the method that the password encoder object that provides to us. If you want to print the credentials, you are free to do so. In my case, I am going to be doing that because I want to see the credentials first, and maybe this is mandatory for you to print it, because there's no way for you to see unless you are in a debug mode that you can consult, or to reach to those variables generated and see those values. But it's more like practically to do to print them all into the console, and then when you run your application and you want to enter the credentials generated, you just go to your application and see the console, and then you take all the username and the password generated, and you just paste it into the fields that you have into your actual form. Now, what we are going to be doing is to create a user in memory, and in this case what we are going to be returning, as I have told you, is to create a user details object, and then we are going to be returning an in-memory user. So how do we do that? First, as the AI here is already suggesting me, what we're going to be doing, I am just pressing tab, by the way, because I want to make rapid this process, because I don't want these videos to be so long. Now, the user details, we are going to be here by the user, coming from the user details and coming from the module of a Spring Framework, Spring Framework Security, and then Core. We're going to be calling the builder static method from the user class, and we're going to be placing here by the username method, we're going to be placing the username generated, and then the password, the encoded password. By the way, this is so important because you can't place the raw password, because that's why we have passed here as a parameter a password encoder object for you to encode that password, and then that encoded password pass it to the user details object, and then you're going to be required to put the roles, and you are going to be putting, in this case, user. If you want to put another kind of, you can put here admin or another user here, but this is so important because if you want to place another role that it is customized by you, you have to take that in mind, because there would be some scenarios that you are required to remember that user, or well, the user's role, and if you don't know, or just put by just with vus, you are not going to be able to remember that. So that's why in this case I have just put user simply as that, and then I am going to be returning a new object of an in-memory user details manager, and we're going to be passing as a parameter the user object generated here of type user details. So what about this error that it is throwing me from this method? To solve this, I have to issue a bin of type password encoder. So another bin, we are going to be writing another bin, and what we are going to be doing is to, like you can see here, the AI is already suggesting me to write a password encoder method that will be issued as a bin. Why? Because as a password encoder, you can see here that when I provide a password encoder to the Spring context, then it gets back the bin again and injects into the another bin of the user detail service that we have right above the another method or the another bin, and then Spring take care of automatically getting back all of the value returned from the below method, and then it will just be doing its work. So that's why the password encoder parameter here was be throwing an error because I haven't created this bean. So take that in mind first. So this is all for this video. I don't want it, as I already said it, to be so long, but I am going to be leaving into this part. I am going to be creating a part 2 because for you to digest very well this content and not to make it like a spaghetti code or like a spaghetti process. I don't know how to name it as you want, but yeah, in this case, what I want you to first get understood, for you to get understood this part, is the role that it takes from the configuration, security configuration class, that this is like the keystone or the key point for the another building that we are going to be putting as a fundamental part to terminate or to finish building our login system completely. But don't worry so much, because this isn't that complex. And with all of this configuration, I must tell to you that by having all of this work done, we have already completed the 60% of the work done. So we have the 40% left to do. That is just creating the controller and the forms. So I'm going to be seeing you in the next time. Bye. Vamos, suscríbete por favor.